My name's Alexi James. I'm with Oracle Primavera. We're one of the sponsors here. I think this is actually our first year sponsoring. And my first time in Charlotte and my first time attending this event, and I've got to say, I'm really impressed. Hopefully they can send me again next year. It was a great learning experience. I've been with Primavera for 3 years, so I guess I'm pretty green. What I've learned, a lot of people in this industry have a lot of experience, a lot of tenure. So it's been a really great opportunity just for me to hear from some of you guys and learn some things. But I'm here to introduce our keynote. This person is recognized as a game-changing career CIO. His IT business partner program has driven exponential business results consistently across industries by bridging the chasm between business stakeholders and IT organizations. He is also the 2015 Charlotte Business Journal CIO of the Year. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to your closing keynote speaker, Joe Topinka.
Thank you very much. If I wander around, can you hear me up there? Okay, great. CIO of the Year, I tell my wife, I really don't get anything for it other than your name in the paper, which means a lot of vendors call me. Now, they didn't know me before, so. I was fortunate, I won 2 years ago in Minneapolis too, so it's kind of a unique privilege to be a two-time award winner. My wife and I moved here just a little over a year ago from Minneapolis to Charlotte, and we're loving it. People tell us that last winter, which we survived here, was cold, and that wasn't our experience. I just wanted to mention that to you. So today I'm going to talk about my favorite topic. I refer to it as IT business partnerships, but it's really centered around bridging the chasm between IT and the executive team, which I refer to as the C-suite. Recently, I gave a keynote in Minneapolis, and I said C-suite, and somebody asked me what that was, so I thought I'd better explain. That's my shorthand for the executive team. I'm sure you've heard the term before. So today I'm going to talk about sort of a market perspective on IT and where we stand in the eyes of the executive team. I'm going to talk about why that matters, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some things you can do to educate the C-suite to kind of help to begin bridging the chasm, and then I'm going to give you some pragmatic ideas that are included in the book, just to talk about how you can actually make a real difference right away on Monday. The book, I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please find your way to Amazon and put a review out there. If you don't like it, then forget I said that. And it's a book that I wrote about, well, it came out last year, and you know, as a CIO, and most people here, gosh, this guy wrote a book. I mean, most people want to poke their eyes out before picking it up and reading it, but it's done really well. It's kind of surprised me. I'm self-published, so your support is very, very helpful and kind. So let's start with the market perspective. I study these survey results from CSC, McKinsey, Forrester, Gartner, and I have for the last 15 years. And I'm mentioning it today because the research that I've just recently read, this came out earlier this year, says that for the first time that I've been watching it, the gap between the C-suite and IT has actually widened. Kind of sort of a terrifying thing if you're somebody who's been working at this your whole career. You can see the numbers. They think that we don't collaborate as business peers less than they used to. This is a big drop between 2013 and 2014. They also don't think we help as much in terms of entering new markets. So again, this is the first time I've seen a drop like this year over year, and that's kind of troubling. Further, when CIOs were asked, how do you feel about your own performance? Basically, we say we suck. I mean, take a look at the numbers. Down 62% on viewing ourselves as a game changer, and down 26% as a business peer. If you can see the fine print, look at the business peer numbers. The best case scenario in 2013 said 15% of us thought we were business peers. That means, you know, if I do the math, 85% said they weren't. That's very troubling to me. I don't understand the perspective, and I don't understand why IT leaders aren't thinking of themselves more as business leaders today. So the book is really about how you can do that. Real pragmatic stuff. Hopefully you'll get a chance to take a look at it. The other set of numbers that I want to share with you is that CIO Magazine does an annual State of the CIO survey. And here they ask business line executives, how often does IT get in your way? So basically what this says is that 1 out of 2 people in your company think IT is an obstacle. Not the greatest news in my mind. Similarly, the CIO said, well, yeah, 33% of the time we get in the way. I want to know who those 33% are and who admitted it and why they're not working on it. So there's a 21% gap between how we view ourselves and how our line of business leaders view IT as an organization. So that's a big issue and it's troubling to me. So Forrester Research, I'm going to throw some numbers at you very quickly here. You can see on the right-hand side that disagree with this statement. CEOs were asked, how well do you agree with these? And so between roughly 60 to 70% of the time, CEOs were thinking that we don't partner or collaborate on business strategy. We don't have effective back office tools. And this one's relevant to you folks. 61% say we don't deliver projects on time or within budget. And I'll tell you, that one really bothers me because oftentimes the executive team and business line leaders think they have no role in projects, that somehow they happen magically inside IT. And so part of what we have to do is get them plugged in. I've got some ideas on how you can do that. They say we don't have the right skill sets. They say we have services that are not easily understood or digested. So this is pretty sobering in my mind as a CIO for nearly 20 years and in the IT profession for almost 40 years. So I joke with my kids, I started before there were computers. So you ask yourself, why is all of this happening? And I think the first thing that I point to is that the executive teams think IT doesn't matter. And some of you may remember 11 years ago, Harvard wrote an article called IT Doesn't Matter. It sent shockwaves through the industry. And a lot of executives kind of hung on to that and still do today. And remember, 11 years ago, we didn't have an iPhone. We didn't have all the social media platforms that we do today. And essentially, the assertion here was, if you spend money on IT, you're wasting your time because it's a commodity. It's the cotton gin of the new era. Don't spend time there because you're not going to differentiate. That's an opinion that's held by a lot of CEOs that I've had conversations with over the years. They also believe that IT costs too much. And in their private groups, in their board meetings, in their neighborhood conversations, they're bitching, moaning, and whining, or BMW driving, as I call it, about IT costs. It's a real issue, and it's one of their favorite things to hate on. They also are unfamiliar with IT. Think about every other function in your organization. Sales, marketing, finance, those functions have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So your executive teams are not instinctively as familiar with IT as they are with those other functions. They have sort of an instinct about what looks like a good sales organization. They don't have a clue what looks like a good IT organization looks like, rather. So they also don't understand that customer experience now is king. And in IT, we have a real opportunity to influence systems of engagement. Many C-suite executives don't see that connection now. And there's numbers to back that up. So customer experience can be heavily influenced by websites that we build or mobile applications that we build, or even helping supply chain deliver products in a way that is pleasing to end consumers, for example. They also don't instinctively think about IT and strategy. Those two words, or two phrases, are oxymorons in most CEOs' minds. They don't think about when they go to the Bahamas, they don't drag IT along with them when they're doing their strategy sessions. And they come back and do the big reveal. I'll talk more about that. Our job now is to try to figure out how to get invited to that Bahamas strategy session because it's a great location, but we can really help. We can help actually drive better results if we're there, participating proactively. And we are our own worst enemy. The language we use has been, by and large, one of the biggest hindrances that we as IT leaders have adopted and created habits around. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that here in a few minutes. Now, if you think about these problems, think about your board of directors. Their average age now is 63 years of age. So most of their experience is pre-digital. So they really don't understand what we do as IT professionals. It's a very foreign concept. And less than 1% of board members or former CIOs or active CIOs. So we're not very well represented on boards. So these things in sort of totality sort of add up to some of the reasons why we've got the problems we do. So, but there's good news. Gartner says that CEO interest in IT is the highest it's been in over a decade. That's fantastic. Now, the flip side of that is, unfortunately, they don't know what to do with that interest. The digital agenda in companies hasn't really shown up. The top 3 investments, according to their research, only 22% have IT in the top 3. They're not spending more on digital marketing, and they're not spending much on the Internet of Things, which is really a profoundly game-changing circumstance that all companies are facing to one degree or another, and I'll talk more about that. So this is the segment that I call Breaking Bad Habits. I borrowed this from a familiar TV show you might know about it. And I think when you think about habits, you know the definition. It's when we regularly follow a pattern of behavior, it becomes basically involuntary. We don't think about it. And I'm going to talk to you about some phrases that are kind of my pet peeves. And after you leave here today, I want you to think about when you say these things, I want you to stop and I want you to think of me. Because why not? So we routinely use language that puts IT outside the business. And if you think I'm wrong, take a look at these. I bet everyone in this room has said one of these phrases at least once a week, maybe once every day. Here's my favorite, the one I dislike the most. Let's align IT to the business. Who said that before? No one's going to raise their hand because I'm talking about it. Think about what that statement says. I know professional services organizations that use this as their tagline. And I usually tell them, look, alignment's for weenies. It's too late. That means IT is not part of the business, and therefore we have to be aligned to it, like some sort of spacecraft docking to the space station in outer space. That's the sort of mindset that we create. It's very subtle, but it's very, very real. So we've got to ditch the alignment language. Another favorite phrase is, let's partner with the business. We say that over and over. Again, what does it say? It says we're not part of it, so therefore we've got to figure out how to partner with the business. These are problematic statements. You know what really concerns me is when I talk to young CIOs and IT leaders coming into the business these days, they're adopting this tired old language. It's anchoring us into the past. And I think we've got to think about how we conduct ourselves and the language we use within our companies. And so instead of alignment, instead of partnering, we've got to start thinking about convergence. I'm going to give you a definition of what convergence means to me and how you can use that within your organizations. But if you think about strategy, you want to be involved proactively as it unfolds, because that's our best opportunity to give advice and counsel in terms of how to actually deliver value back to the company and to the company's customers. So let's get involved up front, not after it's defined. It's less impactful. And there's research that backs me up on that. I'm not sure where to point. There we go. Here's another one. IT must drive value to the business as if we're not part of the business. I know you've all used this language. I have too. In 2012, I took a New Year's resolution to stop using all this language except when I'm doing a keynote. Because I have to say it. But it's hard to get that out of your system because it has become habit. So instead, let's say that IT drives business value. Or let's just say we drive value because in companies, value leads business value. So that's the way we ought to think about it. We call internal departments our customers. I know you use this language. I understand why we do it, but I would ask you today to stop doing that because, again, what it does is it says that IT is not part of the business. In fact, you're a service provider when you use this language, which means you've got a customer service provider relationship in your company, and that's, again, putting IT outside of the business. Instead, here's another one. Let's get requirements from the business. In my PMO, including right now at Snap AV, our business analysts say that to me. And I usually just pause and wait because they know how crazy that makes me. And they say, all right, I'm going to go get requirements from the sales organization. Thank you. Because I don't know who the business is. You're going to ask yourself a question? Is that what you're doing? So these are subtle things, but they really are impactful. Instead, let's refer to them by their internal department name. Or let's call them colleagues, or let's call them peers. That's a much better way to characterize it because we are, in fact, a critical part of every company today. And I'll tell you why that is in just a moment. We refer to ourselves as service providers. That's language that makes me crazy because we're not service providers, we're colleagues. You ever hear sales call themselves a service provider or finance? Nobody does that, we do that. We've got to ditch this old tired language. Think of ourselves as business technology professionals because that's what we are. Also, we pursue this holy grail of shared services. I've been in meetings where I've had folks who run shared services in the audience, and they come up to me afterwards and they're not very happy with me. But really, I understand the premise behind shared services. It's about cost, typically providing value inside a company. But I don't like the language. I would much rather have us focus on shared accountability and shared results. When I do projects, if I'm doing something for the sales organization, for example, if I'm working on a CRM initiative, I have their business goals in the IT team's plan, and they have our project success in theirs. That's what I call reciprocal incentives. That's what I call shared accountability. That's a hard thing to do if you don't have trust amongst the C-suite. But that's a goal that we ought to strive for. Now, when I talk to CIOs, I can repeat it. I can repeat this. I'm going to talk about the mobile mindset in a minute. When I talk to CIOs about this stuff, I always hear this thing. They always say to me, "Hey, Joe, love your stuff, but I'm doing it. Thanks a lot. I'm good." But the reality is, when their CEO counterparts in the audience, they usually come up, they pull me aside and say, "You know what you were just talking about? Our CIO does it. It makes me crazy." So we're not really looking at our own performance with a clear lens. And this is a problem that I call confirmation bias. You all know what that is, but we tend to surround ourselves with people who have the same thoughts and ideas. That's a very problematic thing because it doesn't let us think about the possibilities in the future. So, in our human brain, we dismiss anything that doesn't sort of match our beliefs, and we subconsciously believe things that match our views and dismiss things that really don't measure up. So confirmation bias, watch out for it. Don't pretend like you're actually doing these things when you're not, and the numbers really bear it out. So I think many leaders still rely on the habitual thought patterns and actions that are fenced in by the past. We can't get out of our own way. So I want you to do me a favor. Take these notes down and start using this new language in the office on Monday, and you will start seeing results, very subtle results, but you'll start making an impact in a way that you didn't think was possible. It's worked for me. So why does this matter? Today you have the executive team on one side, IT on the other. There's something very big and powerful that's come in between us, and that's this digital revolution that I want to talk about for a minute, because this is unlike any time in the history of mankind. As long as I've been in IT, I've never seen the profound changes that are happening in every industry that I've ever worked in. So I want to just say again that when CIOs talk to me, they say it's common sense, but I always like to tell them common sense is rarely commonly practiced. So please don't fall into that trap. So there are three things about this digital heat wave that I think are important, and you can take this opportunity to help your executive teams understand the importance of these three things and how they impact your company. Everything is different now, and I mean that from soup to nuts. The way we go to market, the way we deliver solutions, it's all very different. And hopefully that'll become clear to you in a minute. We're now in the middle of early stages of the first 3 or 4 years of a 20-year business cycle that Forrester Research calls the age of the customer. How many have heard about that before? Nobody in the room? A couple people? Well, take a look at these pictures. This is basically what we're talking about, where smartphone technologies have really proliferated almost every aspect of everything that we do. And again, remember, it's only been since 2007 that the iPhone came on the scene. So these things are showing up everywhere, and we don't even think about it anymore. Now that's become habit. So this is not an untypical scene, right, or atypical scene. You see this every day, people walking down the street, usually walking into each other because they're looking at their smartphones. So the way that Forrester describes it is they say it's a technology-fueled, customer-led disruption that's arriving on our doorsteps right now. And what that means to me is that means that customers, because of social media and because of smartphone technology, they have more influence over price, terms, engagement, and behavior, like no time in our history. So think of it this way. If you're at Best Buy and you're interested in buying a TV, what's the first thing you do? Is you grab your smartphone, you go to Amazon to see the ratings and reviews. That's what they call showrooming. And Best Buy, I lived in Minneapolis, that's their headquarters. They struggled initially with that whole phenomenon. Now they're matching and doing better than Amazon on many of those products. They've had to. And they've had to increase their performance on mobile applications. And they've done a lot to try to catch up. And I've seen this happen not only in retail settings, but also in wholesale settings. I was the CIO for almost 7 years at Red Wing Shoes, a 115-year-old manufacturer of high-performance footwear and garments. And it's a privately held company, but they hadn't really changed their go-to-market strategy in 50 years. And this phenomenon started to influence the way they go to market. Most of their business is wholesale, although they have 600 stores across the US and around the globe. We had customers say, look, I want to see on a mobile device, I want to see ratings and reviews and product suggestions, just like when I'm on Amazon. So this mobile mind shift has changed the way they had to go to market, and we delivered that functionality. We did a whole lot more, which I'll talk some about later on. The second thing is the mobile mind shift. Customers expect, and I was just describing this phenomenon, they expect to use the device of choice in their moment of need. They want to consume, communicate, and transact when they're engaging with a customer or with a company. And Forrester Research is now tracking how well companies do this. And they're actually measuring customer engagement based on how well they go to market and how well their solutions actually engage their customers. And when a consumer doesn't have a smartphone application or can't get the information they need, they become disengaged. They look for other avenues to buy product. And there's a whole lot more out there that they can go after. So that's what they mean by the mobile mind shift. The next is the Internet of Things. I know you all know about that. There are going to be a whole bunch of internet-connected devices, sensors. The numbers, as the estimates from experts range from, I've heard 20 billion to 200 billion. It's a lot, and it's starting to happen in droves. And what does all this mean? It means that every company now is in the technology business, regardless of product or service. I think about General Electric. Their CEO, Jeff Immelt, who's been CEO for about 10 plus years now, he did a keynote just recently. He said, we're a software company. That's not something that he would have said even 2 or 3 years ago. You can see their commercials on TV if you've seen them now with the software engineer just announcing that, hey, I'm a software engineer at GE. And they're really talking about the Internet of Things. They describe it as the industrial internet. So they make locomotives and they make all kinds of stuff. And if you look at a train that they build today, it looks the same on the outside. On the inside, it's got thousands of sensors that are communicating in real time with their cloud. And the result of that is they're creating an environment now where they're actually improving the fuel efficiency of locomotives just through all those sensors. So that's a pretty clear example of one company that's obvious where they're manufacturing equipment, where Internet of Things is really becoming a real and important component of their go-to-market strategy. I work at SnapAV, a small manufacturer here in the Charlotte area. A year ago, we had no software per se. We manufacture routers, switches, access points, security and surveillance equipment, speakers, bulk wire. We were a traditional manufacturer. About 1 year ago, just around the time I arrived, we launched a product called Oversee. It's a cloud-based solution that lets our home AV integrators configure and manage all of our IP-based devices from a smartphone. So imagine, the support opportunities that's going to create for them. If Mrs. Smith's Apple TV freezes up, it used to be that they might have to roll a truck, because these are typically do-it-for-me type customers. They usually are high net worth. They usually have a closet full of technology. And these customers do not want to reach behind that closet and try to figure out which cable is the Apple TV. They used to have to roll a truck. Now they just grab their smartphone, they find Mrs. Smith's house, they power cycle that outlet because we've got technology that's enabling that. And since then, we've added 60,000 devices to our cloud, and we're now configuring and managing devices in 20,000 locations across the US. That's in 1 year. So we're moving from manufacturer to managed services provider, which is a whole set of problems that I don't know the end of that story yet, because it's really painful to get companies to understand that when Skype was down last weekend because Amazon was down, we're hosting our stuff on Amazon too. Fortunately, we had a workaround, but when executives who've never experienced managed services are all of a sudden thrust into business and we have that many devices connected, they're kind of freaking out. So that'll be a chapter in the book, I'm sure. I'm not sure the outcome of that yet. So let me give you some ideas on how you can begin to act and think differently, 8 of them. I'm going to go through these very quickly, and you're not going to be gee whiz by them, but they're very subtle and they're very critical, and they'll really help you change the way that non-IT professionals look at IT. And frankly, I want to also say that one of the biggest problems that I've experienced as a CIO is inside IT. We can't get out of our own way, and it's hard to get even the folks that work for me to stop using the language we've used in the past. Because alignment is one of my most disliked phrases. I'm going to remind you again, stop using that language. Think about convergence. Think about IT being the vital part of the business that it is. Think of IT as a central nervous system of your company. No group can match IT's ability to shape systems of engagement through mobile devices and websites, for example. So ditch that old language. It's tired and it's time for it to go away. Strategy should not only be influenced by technology, it should be powered by it. A favorite phrase that I saw, I think Accenture uses this in their marketing. I liked it so well, I threw it in the slide for free, just an extra slide. So the second topic I want to talk about is what I call converged organizations, when IT and the business are intertwined and inseparable. It's a rare thing when it happens, but the power that it results from it and the impact to your company is profound. So I define it as thinking, acting, and achieving together. Those are 3 sort of domains of converged organizations. In thinking together, guess what? These are companies that are proactively plugging IT into the process, strategy process, right from the very beginning, not after the fact. So when that happens, results are profoundly better. I'll show you the numbers in a minute. So that's what strategy, converged and intertwined strategy is all about. The second idea is to act together. So when there are new ideas that come up within your organization, oftentimes we rely on last loudest voice. You have an influential C-suite exec or someone who's influential in the company who has their way with the portfolio. When companies like converged organizations have the opportunity to weigh new ideas, there's a process in place that allows the management team to sort of vet it in a very structured and repeatable way. Process is not a bad word. Process is a good word. You all know that. And without process, you have chaos. And chaos means that you have hope as a strategy. So when you act together, that's when things start to happen. You actually have better financial results. And PwC did a research paper about a year and a half ago, and they found that when companies do this convergence game, and when they get there, they're more likely to understand the consequences of not doing it. They invest more in cloud computing and social media. In fact, any other investment from a technology vantage point that helps drive the needle on strategy. And they're more likely to be on time and within budget on projects. Here's the thing. They found that these companies were 4 times more likely to achieve revenue and profit targets because of the convergence. There's another research paper that's in the book. It's from the Business Technology Management Institute, and they actually measured earnings per share, EBITDA, net profit for companies that achieve this holy grail of converged IT and business organizations. So it's a very real positive outcome if you can get there. The third is to implement business relationship management programs or IT business partner programs, which is the subject of the book that you have in your package. Now, this role is a real role. It's not a made-up role. There's a real job description. They have real responsibilities. It's not a special project that's to be, sort of tested and tried. These folks have 3 responsibilities. 1, understand the company's strategy, because if you don't understand the strategy, you're not going to be able to help get the company where it wants to go. Seems pretty simple to me, but ask yourself and ask your teammates, do you know the strategy? And what is IT doing to actually help drive it? Most CIOs I talk to, when they tell me that they're doing all this stuff, I ask a simple question. What's your portfolio look like? How's it driving the value? How's it driving strategy? The vast majority of them cannot answer it. That's why I know that they're not clearly looking at their own performance. So business partners or BRMs, this is their job. Secondly, they meet with external customers. The research shows that IT organizations are not meeting with external customers on a regular basis. And that's a very, very sad thing from my perspective, because if you're not meeting with external customers, there's no way you're going to be able to figure out what their pain points are. You can't do that effectively through focus groups or through some salesperson's eyes or ears. It just doesn't work. I've got real examples in the book of why I say that. So based on knowing the strategy, based on interactions with external customers and internal departments, then the business partner can really prescribe solutions that drive strategy. They're in charge of that roadmap as a result. So when I look for these people, I look for three predominant skill sets. I look for dot connectors, I look for people that are futuristic, and people that are relators. So, it's really tempting to take a business systems analyst and throw them into this role. But I found that typically those folks are very proud of the systems and the solutions that they've managed. They can't see beyond them. So you really want people who think of the what if question. They're willing to put that system of the past in the past. They're willing to say, look, let's reinvent the new world. Let's talk about customer engagement in new ways. And they're able to work across business lines, and they're able to interact with actual real customers on the outside. So those are the three skills that I look for. So when you're doing this job, when you're thinking about it, you got to legitimize the role, which means you've got to get human resources plugged in right away. You've got to get a job description. There's an example in the book. You got to add them to your career family, because no one will take the job seriously, especially within IT, if it's not really part of your career family. And then for me, what I learned the hard way is that this role, especially initially, has to report to your CIO. If you bury it somewhere else within the organization, people simply will not take it seriously. That's from Hard Knocks. So another idea, start repositioning IT as an ordinary business unit. We have goals and measurements or metrics that you can measure, just like sales and marketing. I remind our C-suite executive of that all the time when they try to take a pass, like, I don't really get IT. At my last job, our CEO would say that over and over and over, and I said, you've got to stop saying that. If you say it and you feel like you need to say it, call me, and I'll come in your office, we'll close the door, and you can tell me privately. But don't tell anyone else, because it gives everyone else the permission to say, I don't get IT, you guys are so complicated, you speak a different language. Encourage them not to do that, and encourage your IT organizations to keep the techno-speak inside the walls of the IT group. Try not to let that out. And I'm going to repeat a couple of these, but let's power up our language. Stop calling internal departments customers. Stop referring to them as the business. Power up your language. This really is impactful. It's very, very subtle, but it's a huge, big deal in companies. When you start acting like a business leader, people start treating you like a business leader. If you call them your customer, and if you refer to them as the business, you're going to continue to be treated as an outsider. So I repeat this one because it's real critically important, just like the alignment one. So when I think about IT leaders that I talk to, I describe IT in three layers. The technology layer at the very bottom is sort of the dial tone, email, phone systems. As IT leaders, we can't spend much time down there, because you got to find a partner that can do that for you. But if you're spending time down there, the best you can hope for is IT service leadership. These services at this layer are critical to the business, but they're non-differentiating. No one comes to Snap AV because of our great phone system or our great email system. Nobody does that. So you really want to spend your business partner time learning about the business. You want them to work with supply chain resources. You want them to work with sales organizations. You want to help solve their problems, help drive their strategy and their plans, because those are actually dovetailing right into the company strategy. When you do that, you get permission to meet with external customers. That's where the magic happens. You get the 4X results. That's where you really start to see how to shape engagement at your company with your products and services. And when you do this, you move from true partner, or from order taker to true partner. This has been game changing for me. This has taken me a number of years to figure out. I still make mistakes, but when you get this stuff right, it is really powerful. It's changed the trajectory of my career. So let me tell you about a few game-changing ideas to demystify IT, which is the subject of my second book. It's not out yet, but I'm working on it. Customer experience matters most. These are two mantras that I use every day. I try to think of them every day. These are plastered on my wall in my office if you come visit me one day. The customer experience is the brand, hide the technology, surface the work. I learned from one of the greats, a guy named Tom Gamal. He's on the back of the book. He started the usability practice at Apple, and I was fortunate enough to work with him in the mid-90s when I was building software for banks. I worked for a large-scale banking software company, which I know is riveting to most people here, banking software. But he taught me what systems of engagement really meant. He taught me about real usability. It was a very profound moment in my career. And so now I take that message with me wherever I go, at every company I go to. So when you think about company strategy, the initiatives that drive the strategy, your company's products and services and customers, all those things are connected. They're not some disparate sort of things that sit in silos. All those things feed on one another. And the best way to see how that's working is to be out in the field. So get immersed in your customers' environments. I'll give you two quick examples. When I was CIO at Red Wing, we had, as I mentioned, 600 stores across the United States. We went and visited about 50 of them to really gauge an understanding of how do customers feel and act with us in our stores. And so when a customer would find a pair of shoes that they wanted to buy, we didn't have inventory. The store manager's only recourse was to flip over to their email system and send a broadcast message out to the entire retail enterprise while that customer is standing on the other side of the counter. Kind of a crazy thing, but this was not that long ago. It's only a few years ago. And we thought to ourselves, boy, that as technologists, that's kind of embarrassing because we have a database and information about what's in each store is in it. So we created this thing called, it's really hard to say, shoe search. Try to say that real fast 3 times. And it was like we invented sliced bread. We put that function on their POS device and it returned back available product closest by store. We even gave them the store manager's name and phone number and email address. What a miraculous thing. It was such a simple thing, but that got talked about for 2 years after we implemented it. And that would never have happened had we not been out in the field to see firsthand what they've been living with. So sometimes end users or your counterparts, your peers, sort of put things aside when they know they can't fix a problem. It becomes transparent to them. Another example is when I was at a large accounting firm, the largest mid-market accounting firm in the US. Anybody from McGladrey here? We're going to be careful. So I spent 4 years at McGladrey as their corporate CIO. We did the same thing. We said, look, we have high turnover. We're losing employees at the height of Sarbanes-Oxley, which is the Accountants Full Employment Act is what our managing partner used to call it. And so we were really concerned about why that was. We said, look, let's get out there. Let's see how this audit technology really works in the field. So we did. And what we found is these auditors were dragging around a 5-year-old Lotus Domino laptop and connecting every auditor to it. And that's where all the audit work papers were. And it would crash multiple times during the day. And the frustration that we heard from our employees, a lot of 4-letter words. We actually wrote all that stuff down. And we were trying to figure out how do we convey all this to our management team because they're not going to believe what we're seeing and hearing. We also heard customers look in on our audit rooms and go, wow, what a disaster, because there were cords and papers everywhere. You couldn't figure out who was on first base. So what we did is we drew some pictures. And this is a technique that you can use. In the book, there's a full complement of these. These were real quotes. And we showed the management team these quotes, and they were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe that this was actually happening in the company that they were running. And this was really a big part of why our turnover was so high, because our competitors all had better technology. This is probably 2005 or 6, and people were using BlackBerrys big time back then, and they'd be on an airplane with somebody from Grant Thornton. They'd see them with their smartphone, and they'd be doing their thing, and they'd be trying to figure out how to get their Domino server powered up and connected. So that was a really big deal. So we drew this picture. A picture's worth 1,000 words. What it did is it helped the management team feel the pain their employees and customers were feeling. Then we drew a picture that said, look, if we do these 5 things, this is what tomorrow will look like. Here's Nirvana. So we gave them the before and the after, like the big reveal on one of those HGTV home improvement shows. It really worked. It was profound. We actually wrote a bunch of short stories. We told some stories set into the future with all the technology fixed. That also helped to tell the story. Now, when you are in an IT organization that is not plugged in, you're not converged, what I learned the hard way is that you can't use that as an excuse. You got to back into strategy. The way I do it is I look at the portfolio of projects that you're actively working on, and you do your very best to see how those things connect to the strategy. And once you figure out what projects connect and which ones don't, you then ask your executive team for an audience. You ask them, hey, come on, take a look what we did. Let's review the portfolio of projects. Let's map them up. I've done this a couple of times. When you talk to a bunch of accountants, they're not terribly excited about coming to see you. But when you're able to connect the dots for them and they see the portfolio and how there's a mismatch there, they get pretty excited because they want to maximize the investment dollars of the company. So back into strategy. The keys to transparency these are my three favorites. What I do in companies is I spend time with our business partners, teaching end users and our colleagues how to request projects, because all of us have lived through the days where somebody throws a request over the wall to IT and then they bitch, moan, and whine about IT not working on their stuff. It happens every day. So what we do is we say, look, we have a budget, we have constraints, and we can only work on so much stuff. So when you request something, you got to come prepared to talk about its top or bottom line benefits. Because we're going to look at everyone else's great ideas, and we're going to take our limited resources and we're going to apply them to the best ideas. And our business partners help them prepare that. It's a simple process, but it's very powerful. So teach them how to ask for projects. So-called business folks don't often do this, but they should. That's part of your corporate fiduciary responsibility. Secondly, when you make decisions in your governance committees, you got to make sure that you're telling executives and the rest of the company what you decided to work on and what you decided to pass on. Then make those projects completely available. I use an intranet called PNN, Project News Network, as a way to kind of give the executives and the whole company the ability to see everything that we're working on. This is a wireframe. This is in the book. So we don't hide anything. We show charters, status reports, issues, budgets. Everything is there for everyone to see in plain view. So when you make your project portfolio completely transparent like this, you get the arrows for the bad projects, the projects that are behind or over budget, but you earn so much respect because you're viewed as someone who really understands transparency. So also you need to make the request process as simple as possible. We created a one-pager for most projects. I mean, if you're doing tens of millions of dollars on one single investment, you probably need more than one page. But by and large, make it as easy as possible for someone to bring a good idea forward. And then also when you're making decisions about investments, I use the scoring tool at Red Wing. This became the primary tool for vetting capital-based investments across all the company, not just within IT. So it's a 6-scale system. We ask the management team to help us with the weighting. And every new investment, they sit down with a spreadsheet basically, and they say, boy, this idea is on a scale of 1 to 5, it's a 3 in terms of how it fits the strategy, or operational fit, or end of life, or ROI, or how certain are we of the cost. This has gone to a great distance to really improve how people sort of see IT. We're not that mysterious, just some secrets anymore. We also use a 5-scale system for status instead of a traditional red, green, yellow, largely because projects don't go from green to yellow overnight, and I thought that a 10-scale system was too complex. We sit down with our CFO. I've done this now several times. We look at schedule, scope, resources, and budget, and we ask them, look, help us define when something should go from a 5 to a 4 to a 3 to a 2 to 1. You know, help us with those parameters. And so now it's not just project managers sticking their thumb in the air. There's actually criteria behind it. We call this ProCon, and this has also been game-changing, and I've seen this adopted outside of IT and other business units. The other thing is, you know, you've got to get your executive team to spend time looking at the portfolio. This is not bragging, by the way. I heard somebody the other day, I did a dinner with a group of CIOs, and they were saying, well, isn't that kind of bragging when you're telling them about your successes? And that's kind of an attitude that a lot of CIOs have. When the sales team's reporting on their sales forecast, that's not bragging. That's just reporting financial results. We need to do the same thing. And executives oftentimes will say, I am not going to spend an hour with you guys every month. That's crazy. I'm not IT, are you kidding me? But they're the same ones that are bitching, moaning, and whining about IT costs, and I usually guilt them into coming because I say to them, look, if we're going to spend millions of dollars every year, isn't it worth your time, 1 hour a month, 12 hours a year, just to take a look at the portfolio? Isn't that worth your time? Usually they'll say, all right, I'll come. And what we do is we review the projects that we just completed. We tell them the business value that it delivered, or it promises to deliver, and how we're doing against those goals and metrics. We track investments, we make decisions on new ideas, and we communicate them. Very, very simple. It usually lasts 45 minutes unless there's an investment. Sometimes that creates dialogue and passion and debate, which it has already at Snap. We're using this today. So this is a simple way of getting them plugged in. Now here's another one, challenge bad behavior. So I can't tell you how many times I've been in executive meetings where a line of business leader is behind on their revenue forecast. And oftentimes what happens is they'll turn to the CEO and say, doggone it, you know, that IT, I've asked them to do this stuff for years, and I don't know why they're not working on my stuff. I give them stuff to do, they don't do it, you know, and they whine and whine. And in reality, what happens is the CEO looks at me and says, Joe, what good is, why don't you help a brother out? And I usually say, well, hang on a second. You know how it works around here. We don't do last loudest voice, and we're very open to doing new projects. But then I ask the business line leader, hey, why haven't you made the case? It's your business. If you've got business results that you think you can improve, I mean, you're telling me your revenue's off because you don't have the right report? It doesn't make sense to me. But if that's true, help us understand the top or bottom line benefits that you can derive as a result of our making the investments you're asking for. So when you do that, it puts the onus back on them where it belongs. So that's what I call challenging bad behavior. Here's another one, combat oversimplification. This is a very real story. This happened at a previous job. We were working on a multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollars, multi-channel commerce initiative. We were changing everything about how we went to market. And our CEO was bitching, moaning, and whining, driving their BMW, talking to their neighbors at a family party. And one of the neighbors said, hey, we do websites. I could probably do that over the weekend for less than $5,000. And I literally had to explain to our CEO and ultimately to our board why $5,000 isn't good enough. And it sounds crazy, but it happens every single day. I'm sure you've all experienced it. So what I did is I said, look, let's take a look at the I know a guy syndrome. You could probably build a website for free over the weekend if you want to. There's lots of sites out there, web.com, Weebly, you name it. But if you're running a small business and you get an order, somebody's running out to the garage to get the product, put it in a FedEx box, either driving it to FedEx or maybe FedEx will come and pick it up. You never know. But in our company, we had tens of thousands of products and lots of SKUs, and we had warehouses all over the globe. And you start to paint that picture, and they go, oh, yeah, I get it. It's got to integrate to our warehouse management system. And our demand planning system. Oh, and it's got to send an email to the customer saying, here's the tracking number. All that has to be automated because it's a lot more complicated than you think. And that stuff has to show up in the website. It has to show up on the mobile device. So when you start to do that, you go, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. It's more than just a weekend project. So, true story. So when you have new executives, this is another hard lesson that I learned. Living in Minneapolis, big technology marketplace, 3M company, Best Buy, Medtronic, Cargill, the world's largest privately held company, massive quantities of retailers there, Sportsman's Guide, Northern Tool, Target, all those companies are there. We hired an executive from Best Buy. And if you know anything about Best Buy, about 15 years ago, their CFO decided it would be a good idea to outsource all of IT because it doesn't matter. IT does not matter. It doesn't differentiate. Therefore, Accenture, come on in and take it all over. Now they're undoing it. They're unraveling that. Well, that executive did not understand convergence. They didn't understand this whole idea about really driving value to our customers. And so he sort of polluted the environment and sort of dragged us back to the old world. So sometimes it's like, you know, when you wear braces and you have to put a retainer in, you know, if you don't wear it for a while, you try to put it back in, it doesn't quite fit. So these folks that come from the outside that don't understand the new way, they're kind of like that forgotten retainer. You got to get them in to the conversation early on and help them on board to learn the new ways of the world. This is subtle. Change your name from IT to business technology. Doesn't cost much. And I get teased about that. I did at Red Wing, I did at McGladrey, I did at Snap. But I'll take the teasing because I said, yeah, well, There's a subtle reason why we're trying to do that. We're trying to be more business oriented. Isn't that what you want anyway? When I hear from non-IT business leaders who give me a brief about that, we're trying. We want to learn. We want to be more impactful. So come on, help us row this boat. Usually that's what happens. So in summary, I think we can do quite a bit to really help inform and educate the executive team. Remember the mobile mind shift, the age of the customer, the Internet of Things. These are technologies that are having a profound effect on your company's go-to-market strategies. We have to stop acting like an outsider. Start adopting the language that we talked about. Speak the language of business. Strive for those converged relationships, and reposition IT as a legitimate business unit. And if you've heard nothing else from me today, make sure that you're spending time with external customers. If you haven't done that, make a plan to do it next week, because you're going to find some profound things that have gone unnoticed for many, many years. So that's a quick summary. And when you do all these things, by the way, and this is what has been game-changing for me in my career, we've moved IT from a mysterious chest of secrets known as this necessary evil. Some call us the cash-sucking sound in companies. And it moves you over to trusted partners, business peers, and game changers. So it's been profound. I hope you read the book, and I hope you enjoy it. That's my presentation for this afternoon. Oh, if anybody wants copies of the book, that I know you've got one, but your family might want to read it. We've got extra copies, and we've been more than happy to sign them too, if you're interested in me signing your copy. I'll be outside for a bit. Thank you.